Hey there, welcome back to my channel. My name is Megan and I have another DIY for you today. It is a baby gate. It's also perfect for pets, and I will give you all of the details on how I built it and how you can make your very own in this video. My daughter is now 9 months old, so she is crawling, she is trying to stand, she wants to walk, she's into everything, and so for her safety, I made these baby gates, and not only is it a more aesthetically pleasing baby gate than most that I've seen and ones that I've owned in the past, but it was a lot cheaper than some of the nicer baby gates on the market. I liked that I was able to customize it for the space that I was putting it in, and I'm going to tell you all about that once we get started. The first thing you're going to want to do is to measure. I'm measuring the space between the banister here and the baseboard molding that I have at the top of the stairs. You want to make sure you take into account your baseboards. If you measure all the way to the wall, then your gate is going to be too big. And I'm also going to measure for the height. I found that 25 inches was the perfect height for both of my stairs. If you have somebody who's operating the gate that's very tall, or if you have a very large dog that you're trying to contain, you may want to make it a little bit taller. Now I'm using one type of wood for this project, and they are pine 1x4 common boards. How many of them you need depends on how big of the gate that you're making. I found that using 3 8-foot boards, I had just enough to make my project. And I will tell you that if you are buying primed or select pine boards, you're going to pay a lot more, especially because wood is so expensive right now. Now I'm just making 8 cuts. I have 2 boards that are going to be the width of my gate and 6 boards that are going to be cut to the height of my gate. If this sounds a little bit confusing, then just hold tight because I'm going to give you a visual in just a moment. Here are the 2 boards that are cut to the width of my baby gate. They're going to make the top and bottom of the gate. And then I'm going to add in the other 6 boards, which are going to make the slats of my gate. These are cut to the height of my gate. This part does require a little bit of math to kind of figure out how you want to have this arranged. Before I get ahead of myself, I just start with 2 on the outer edge, and I'm going to glue these using some wood glue. I am going to reinforce these with some nails, so you don't need to go crazy with the glue, but it is nice to just have it in place and have that reinforcement there. If your cuts are straight and your boards are straight, you don't need to worry about using a level or anything for this part. I just make sure that all my corners are lined up really nicely on both sides. And like any real DIYer, I'm just going to use some heavy books to weigh this down while this glue dries. You'll want to let it sit for about 30 minutes until the glue dries, but once it does, we can start arranging the other slats. Now, like I said, you might need more slats depending on how wide your gate is. For me, I felt comfortable having 4 inches in between each of my slats, and that is what worked for the width of my opening and also what I felt comfortable with my children. Once you get it all configured and spaced out correctly, you can glue these down. What's nice about using the wood glue is it doesn't dry immediately, so you can still move it around a little bit after you have placed your board down and remeasure to make sure it's in the exact spot that you want it in. And once these have dried, we can start nailing our boards in. I really like to use a hammer and nail whenever I can. I find that it is just a really basic technique that I think a lot of people overlook because there's so much technology and all of these tools now. But I'm just using a 1-inch nail with my hammer, and then I'm also going to use a nail punch to drive the nail just a little bit deeper, and then I'm going to cover my nail holes with wood filler. And I'm doing 4 nails for each end of each board, which is 8 nails in each board, and it's probably a bit much. You really could get away with just doing 2 nails on either end. Once you've got all your nails in, you can start covering up your little holes with some wood filler, and that's what I'm doing here. This step is optional, but I highly recommend it. You could just sand all of your nail holes with a hand sander and get them nice and smooth, but because lumber is so expensive right now and because I am using the cheaper common pine boards, I highly recommend sanding it all down if you have the time or the resources. It's going to make the paint lay a lot better. It's going to prevent anybody getting a splinter or anything of that nature, and it's just going to look a lot nicer. Now that my gate is sanded, I'm going to prime it. I recommend priming it if you have the pine common boards like I do, because you're going to want to cover up your knots. They're going to show through the paint if you don't. If you're using the more expensive select or pre-primed boards, then you can skip this step. Now that my primer is on and dry, I can paint it. I'm using Benjamin Moore's Advance paint. It's perfect for trim, cabinets, baby gates. I love this stuff. I have a ton of it because I am currently updating the paint in our house, and I'm painting all of my baseboards and crown molding with this. And it is in the color White Dove and a semi-gloss finish, which I highly recommend using at least a satin on the baby gates because it'll be a lot easier to clean. You're going to have a lot of fingerprints and just wear on it, so it's easier to clean if you have a shinier finish. Okay, the gates are dry and ready to mount. All of the gate hardware that I'm using I will have linked below in the description box. And what I'm doing now is I'm just marking where my hinges are going. I found that this size was perfect for the 1x4 boards that I used. However, there is a third hole on the hinge that I will not be utilizing because the screw that it came with was very long and it would have gone through the back of the 1x4. So just using the first 2 holes is sufficient enough. Now I'm just doing a little dry fit so I can mark out where my gate is going to go. It is going to screw into the baseboard there at the bottom, but I am going to have to shim out the top and to make up the difference between the wall and the baseboard. I'm marking where I'm going to mount this gate on the wall and on the baseboard, and I'm using a level so that I can make sure that my holes are in the right place. And like I said, I do have to shim out the top, and I found that using a scrap piece of the 1x4 was the perfect depth that I needed to match the depth of the baseboard. So I'm just pre-drilling my little scrap piece of 1x4, and I'm going to mount this onto my wall. My walls are plaster, they are lath and plaster, and so it's really easy to screw things into them. But if you have regular drywall, you're going to want to make sure you either hit a stud or you use an anchor. I still have a lot of painting and renovations to do in this house, so normally I would probably paint this to match the color of the wall, but because I haven't painted the walls yet, I'm going to paint it to match the color of the gate. And it's just going to look a lot nicer than having that big piece of wood there on the wall. Now that that's dry, I can start to hang my gate, and I've already pre-drilled my holes, and it would be a lot more helpful if I had someone with me to help me hold the gate, but I'm always doing stuff myself, so I am holding the gate with my arm, then using my drill on the other hand to screw this in. And you just want to make sure that you are mounting this into either a stud or a shim like I have done. You don't want to just mount this into drywall. It will not hold, it will not stay, and it will not be safe for your baby or your pet. I personally found it easiest to attach the top part of the gate hardware and then use my level to mark where I was going to attach the bottom gate hardware into the baseboard. Now I've come to the other side of my gate to attach my latch. I'm just dry fitting it, kind of figuring out where I want to put it and marking where my screw holes are. I love this latch and I chose it because it's very user friendly and would be very easy for my toddler to use or anyone who's elderly that might be visiting my home. However, I just want to warn you that if you decide to use this particular latch, you have to be very careful when you're installing it because it does scratch quite easily. Every threshold, every staircase is going to be a little different. This is my other staircase where I actually attach the gate hardware to the banister and then I attach the latch to the wall. It's just what worked for that space. I did have to shim out the latch area just because the banister stuck out a little further than the wall. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave me a comment. Let me know if this is a project that you would try in your home, what you think of this DIY baby gate / pet gate, and make sure you subscribe if you're not already. I'll see you next time.